Okay, so good evening, everyone, and you are welcome to this session today, which I'll try and make as interactive as possible. In the workshop, we'll be talking about interview skills, which are needed for any role, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, whatever the case, unless you own your own practice, you'll require interview skills to enable you to get that first job, that second job, that third job, because no job is actually for life. So we'll be discussing interview skills. We'll be taking a look at whether we use or whether we agree that we should use ChatGPT or whether we should just go and present our natural selves. We'll also be taking a look at when we should ask for the benefits package. Should we ask at the first stage interview if there are multiple stages, or should we wait a bit? We'll be asking ourselves a lot of questions. So whilst this is a recorded session, we will be asking ourselves to unmute ourselves and to just ask questions or contribute to this workshop. So let's actually take a look at why I named this 5 job offers in 5 days. It stems from last year, August, which was a really stressful period for me. I'd just been offered a role by a company, which I'd allowed to waste my time for 3 months for the second year in a row. And I was really excited. I was really keen to join that company. And the offer was made. And then for some reason, a week later, the offer was withdrawn. And I'm pretty pragmatic. So if I attend an interview and I don't get the offer, which hasn't happened in years, but if I attend an interview and I don't get an offer from it, I just assume that the job wasn't for me, which was the case in this instance. The job was offered to me and then it was withdrawn, but I'd actually allowed the company to waste my time for the second time, for the second year in a row. So that was really my fault. However, following that incident in August, I then was approached by agencies for 5 different roles. And for each of those roles, I received an offer. And then I then had the opposite problem of not actually being successful at interview, because I then had to decide on which of the roles I would accept. And that was really stressful. Each of us might think, oh, wow, that sounds wonderful. You know, I mean, that, yep, I'd like to be in that position, but it was really stressful. It's easier to select from 2 offers than to select from 5 offers. In one role, I was very, you know, it was easy for me to actually reject that offer because of some questions that they asked me during the interview. So it was easy for me to reject that one, but the other 4 were for organizations that I would have loved to work for equally. But I could only accept one, which is what I did eventually. It was a contract role and I accepted that role for health reasons. And then I eventually ended up in March this year being approached by one of the other 5 roles that I'd been offered in August. And so I'm now there. That's where I've landed up now at the right time. So everything happens for a reason and in season. Now that we've got quite a few delegates here, we've got 85 here so far, I'd like to welcome us all to this workshop where we'll be talking about the topic, interview skills, 5 job offers in 5 days. My name is Ibukan Emmanuel Adebayo. I'm the founder of the Ladder Back Down, which is an organization that I set out in 2020, January 2020, to try and inspire and motivate Black humans to actually support one another, to actually assist one another, to actually pull ourselves up the ladder rather than trip ourselves over each time. Now, I'm well aware that this workshop, and indeed the Ladder Back Down WhatsApp group, may consist of humans from every race. And that is okay. It is absolutely okay, because I value each human being for what they are, rather than for their race or any other trait that often serves to divide humanity rather than to unite us. So it's okay if anybody's here, you are welcome if you're not a Black human. However, the Ladder Back Down itself was formed to try and inspire Black humans to unite rather than to remain disunited at the expense of our progress as a Black race. We'll be taking a look at writing a compelling profile statement in our CVs. We'll be also taking a look at pre-interview research preparation. We'll be taking a look at when does our interview actually start? Does a job interview start the minute you walk through the door, or when you take your seat at the interview table? Or does your interview start from the minute the hiring manager starts asking you questions? Then we'll be taking a look at the 30-second elevator pitch. And I'll be asking a few of us to actually give a 30-second elevator pitch where you try to sell yourself within 30 seconds. Body language during interviews. Do we actually just roll up into our interview, sit down, and we cross our arms or cross our legs, or slump in our seats? How do we answer interview questions? And what type of questions should we be asking the hiring manager and those interviewing us? Because remember, whilst we're being interviewed for the job, we should also be interviewing the company. We need to make sure that we're interviewing the company. We'll also be taking a look at post-interview follow-up actions. What do we do after we've attended our interviews? Within this session, we'll be taking a look at ChatGPT. Should we use it or shouldn't we use it? Or what benefits does it offer us during our pre-interview research preparation? So that's what we'll be taking a look at today. Now, here's a CV profile statement example. When I say a CV profile statement example, it's actually my CV profile statement. The reason I'm sharing this is because when I do the mentoring sessions, I often ask the person ringing me to share their CV with me just before the session. And then we talk through their CV. And I've often shared my CV with individuals just to share an example of how to draft a profile statement. And a lot of people have fed back that they've actually gotten jobs or they've been called for interviews where they hadn't previously been called for interviews. Now, what I suggest to people is that it's not the exact wordings in this CV that anyone should be copying. Rather, it's the format. So when I ask people to format and copy the format, what I mean is I state exactly what I am in this statement. I also share my values in this statement. I briefly share my experience in this statement. I also talk about my strengths and feedback that I've received from a workplace 360 degrees EQI summary. Now, let's break this down. I first of all talk about the fact that I've got experience in different sectors. And then I importantly state, just in case anyone's thinking of hiring me into a culture where there's no integrity, I state there clearly that I'm integrity driven. And it took me many years to have the courage to actually state this, because I know that that would eliminate me from some roles. But I've stated it there clearly so that anyone that approaches me knows straight up that this is exactly what you're going to get. And then I mentioned that I've worked in an agile environment. Then I talk about the different functions that I can work in, as in IT, cyber privacy, GRC. And then I've talked about my experience briefly here and a bit of my knowledge. And then I now state here the sort of environment that I'd like to work within going forward. I'd like to continue to use my outlined experience, competencies in a permanent role. So you state whether it's a permanent or a contract role that you're looking for, to reduce XYZ within a culturally rich organization, so that a firm knows that if you don't have a culture of integrity, if you don't have a culture of nurturing people, of bringing out the best in people, then please don't call me. So stated clearly there exactly what I'm looking for. Then I now go on to talk about my strengths based on feedback. And why do I do this? It's so that in an interview, the hiring manager may ask the question, your company, rather than asking, what would your manager or colleagues say about you? They already have the answer to that based on this statement here. These are my core competencies based on a leadership report at 2 previous workplaces. Oftentimes, I'll then be asked, here I've written the feedback provided in 2013. Ibukan is an enhanced leader in 18 out of 20 leadership competencies and an effective leader in the remainder 2. I'm then asked the question, what are those remainder 2? Which I share with the hiring manager. And then I now say, and this is what I've done about those 2 areas. So writing a passionate and strong profile statement does help. because that's the first thing that a recruiter will see from your CV. Tell a recruiter exactly what you want to do, what your experience is in, and what you want to do going forward, and the environment you'd like to work in. If you're integrity driven, state it there. It may not get you as many interviews as you want, but at least it will get you the right type of interviews for the right type of organization that you would like to work with. So this is all part of your pre-interview preparation for your interview. Now, let me ask us a question. And if we could vote by raising our hand, please, in the chat window. How many of us have used ChatGPT to prepare for our interviews? Okay, so I'll just look at the hands in the group. Okay, seeing a few hands. Okay, so I'll just give us a minute. How many of us have used ChatGPT to prepare for our interviews? Yeah, so a few thumbs up, not that many. Okay, just trying to see. Okay, somebody has said no. Thank you. Anyone else voting? Okay, well, so we've got a few more people voting now and saying, yes, they have used ChatGPT. Now, I went into ChatGPT for the first time last night to just check and see exactly what it's about. And I asked the question, give me IT interview questions. And then the system brought out these questions here. Describe the process of data backup and disaster recovery. Can you explain the concept of network latency and how it affects performance? Explain the concept of a RESTful API and its advantages. And then what are the advantages and disadvantages of cloud computing? The sole reason that I don't use it is, well, actually not the sole reason, but the first reason is that having looked at this last night, I wouldn't ask these sort of questions. I've never asked these sort of questions for an IT professional joining the team. These sound a lot like interview questions. But if everyone could could lower their hand, please, and I'd like to ask another question, please. How many of us have successfully gotten an interview, having gotten a job rather, having used ChatGPT for our interview prep? How many of us have had the exact same questions asked of us at interview? Okay, so I'm seeing a no, seeing a yes. Well, we've attended an interview and we've had these questions asked of us. Okay, thank you for that. So again, in my view, these questions, they sound like examination questions. Describe the steps involved in the software development lifecycle. I'd be asking a question. If I were asking a question, I'd be asking, tell me about a time where you've actually engaged in the software development lifecycle to deliver a project. And that sort of question may or may not be in ChatGPT. Apologies again, I went into it yesterday for the first time. So I wouldn't really use it. Another reason why I wouldn't use it is because it's great to have these sort of questions and to practice them. But what if you practice them and then, so you're asked, what is the purpose of a VLAN? You answer that at interview, and then they ask you a follow-up question, which you haven't prepared for. So those are some of my issues with personally using this tool. But I'm not saying that you shouldn't use it, if it's, especially if it's worked for you in the past. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it. However, I have misgivings about using it personally myself. I'd rather actually go to an interview, similar to actually going online and asking yourself questions, 100 questions that they may ask a cybersecurity expert, which is on the next slide. Please, if we have a further question, could we just raise it in the chat window? Just type it in the chat window, and then we'll take questions at about 5:45 BST. In about 20 minutes, we'll read out those questions, because I'm unsure of if you're unable to put down your hand. Let me just lower it for you. And if you could kindly type your question in the chat window. So here we've got ChatGPT yourself. So I've explained that I've never used it before. And I think that I would recognize actually someone who's prepared for an interview using ChatGPT, largely because if I were to ask a follow-up question from any of these questions, that's where a candidate may come unstuck. So you can use this as a guide when preparing for your interview, but not necessarily as the, be all and end all. I took a look also at some cybersecurity interview questions. Again, in some instances where this is a new, where it's a new role or a junior role, yes, you may get asked the different, the question, what is the difference between authentication and authorization? But again, these sound like they're examination questions. What is the role of a firewall in network security? Explain encryption and its importance in security. There are some actual good ones here. Can you explain the concept of zero-day vulnerabilities and how they can be mitigated? But again, I've seen that in exams. And here they've actually put a warning. These questions cover various aspects of cybersecurity and can help to assess a candidate's knowledge and understanding of the field. But then there's that warning. The depth and complexity of the questions can vary depending on the position and level of expertise being evaluated. I can't see anyone attending an interview where they're asked the question, what is the role of a CISO, of a Chief Information Security Officer? But some of these web type questions, can you explain the concept of secure coding practices and why they are important? Yes, one may get asked that sort of question as a developer, but the main point is don't rely on attending an interview and getting asked one of these questions. Don't base your preparation solely on this, because if you were to attend an interview and they don't ask you any of these questions, that just makes the interview more stressful than it actually needs to be. What do we need to research when we're preparing for our interview? And please now raise your hand if you've got any questions. What do we need to research if we're preparing for an interview? And Joshua's raised a very valid point here, that he's thinking that the ability of ChatGPT to give relevant guidance is dependent on the ability of the person asking the questions. Absolutely. Very valid point there. Thanks, Joshua. If you don't ask the system a question, a valid question, it will provide you with an invalid answer. If you don't know what question to ask the system, it's definitely not going to know how to tailor its responses to you. So again, no one's saying that we shouldn't use ChatGPT or any other AI tools that may exist. However, it's important that we don't solely rely on that. What do we need to search for when we're preparing for our interviews? What information do we need to find out? How many of us have gone to a company's website to take a look at their CEO, who our line manager might be? Yes, thank you. The company, the role, what they do, know your CV, how your skills and experience is relevant to the role. Thank you, Justice. Tolulope, thank you. Yemisi, thank you. You said research the company. Yes, we need to find out about the core staff in the company. Who's their HR manager, their HR director, for example? Who's their CEO? What news, what information is available about their CEO online? HR. Why HR? Does anyone know why you need to possibly research who the HR director is? Because as Gloria has said, you can, to a certain extent, tell the values of the company by looking at who is at the helm of HR, in addition to the CEO, in addition to the senior management team. Yes, just as I said, so you know how efficient HR is. So you search out core company personnel. You can search on LinkedIn. See what the CEO writes on LinkedIn. Do they actually write on LinkedIn? Because they may actually not write on LinkedIn if they're a startup, for example. But you need to find out as much information as possible about the core leaders of that company. You may also need to find out what projects are happening in the company. What projects they've got ongoing, what projects they delivered last year. What projects have they got ongoing now? What projects did they deliver last year? And I'd say something now. It's vital that we learn how to read financial statements. I will often go and check out a company's financial statements where they submit their annual accounts. Yep, exactly. So Adiolu said you can read on the annual report of the organization. Iritunde talked about culture, and Olubumi talked about how, you know, HR with regards to how committed they are to the staff's needs. But yes, we need, okay, Abiodun asked, how do we know all these in case they don't put it on their website? Well, each company, wherever they are globally, need to actually post, they have a legal obligation to post their annual financial statements. So in their financial statements, they submit their financial statements usually to, in the UK, it's the Companies House or the Charity Commission if they're a charity. In the US, I believe it may be the SEC if it's a publicly listed company, but there may be other organizations that companies in the US need to submit their financial statement of accounts to. So you go and view their financial statements, you go and view key projects. And I know I've seen a question just now, if they don't put it on their website, then where do you go? Well, you go to LinkedIn, you go to Google. Not for their financial statements, but for core company personnel, for news about the company. Can anyone type in the chat window, please? Why do we need to review a company's financial statements? Can anyone type in the chat window, please? Why do we need to review a company's financial statements? Financial growth and prospects, thank you. Anything else? Yep, profitability status. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So Talk said to assess the profitability and liquidity, but Adiolu's given the correct answer actually here. You need to know if the company is financially stable. To know if they're struggling or not. Yemisi said growth and business continuity. You want to be sure they're not sunsetting. Debts and liabilities. I think the most important thing is you need to know if the company that you're joining is financially stable. Yeah, because you wouldn't like to work for a company that is struggling financially. Thanks, Prince Emmanuel, as well. Yeah, you wouldn't want to work, you wouldn't want to leave a stable job to go and join a company that is struggling financially, unless you are a finance professional going there to turn the business around. Staff retention. Yep, you need to know if the company is going to hire loads of people and then it's going to lay everybody off in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, 6 months' time, because it can't afford to keep the staff on. You check Google News reports. How did they treat staff during COVID? Now, I was invited to submit my CV for a company in May, I think it was. Yeah, May last month, at the beginning of last month. And I wasn't interested in going anywhere because I'd recently started a job. I'd actually started a job a few weeks prior to someone approaching me for this job. So I said to the company, no, that I said to the recruiter rather that, no, I'm not interested in going there. And I then, after I'd told her that I wasn't interested in going. I went to review the company's financial performance, and I found that during COVID that they laid off 50% of their staff. And I thought, well, I haven't seen any news reports of their fortunes getting better. So why would they then, of their financial performance now improving, so why would they then be looking to recruit me to come in and suddenly, leave a good job that I'd just gotten? So always check out news reports of any company before you join them. Check LinkedIn, check Twitter. See what the senior managers are writing, publishing. See if there's any Sky News reports or TV news reports about the company before you attend an interview, not after you've attended an interview, not after you've joined the company. Glassdoor reviews. How many of us use Glassdoor? Could we just do a thumbs up if we use Glassdoor and a thumbs down if we don't? How many of us use Glassdoor to check out reports on companies prior to attending an interview, not just even prior to joining the company, prior to attending an interview? Okay. So we've got 100 people here, and I've only seen about 10 thumbs or so. So 100 delegates, 10 thumbs. The majority actually use Glassdoor. Why should we use Glassdoor? Why should we use Glassdoor? So we've got a lot of thumbs up indicating that we do use it. Why should we use Glassdoor before attending an interview rather than before joining the company? If we type it in the chat. Okay. Yes, thank you. So we've had from Esther and Justice for employee reviews. Olubumi said for employee stories of past experiences. And to help get interview questions asked from previous candidates. Another Olubumi has said that. To see company reviews from people who've worked there to help guide our decision, reviews, employee experiences. Now, one of the things that we haven't actually said here is staff feedback. Yes, Blessing, thank you so much for that. To know the pros of the company and know if they actually stand with our values. So to know if the company's values align with our values. I think that's what you were trying to say. So thank you for that. You can see genuine reviews from employees. Adiola said, and Ade said, so we don't waste our time if we don't like the reviews. I think one of the reasons that I'd maybe tend to disagree on is that we shouldn't actually base our decision on whether to attend an interview on if we don't like the reviews. What I would look at when I look at Glassdoor is not only the reviews from employees, because some of the employees may actually be disgruntled. However, I look at the feedback from the company. I look at the feedback from the company because that will tell you everything you need to know about that company. In some cases, a company will be referred to on Glassdoor as an engaged employer. And that means that the employer actually monitors Glassdoor reviews and they will respond. So I often will look at the employer's response, and I'd advise you to do the same. Look at the employer's response, and when you're looking at employee reviews, check the consistency. If you've got a lot of employees saying the same thing, then if you're going to choose to attend that interview, you may want to raise the question at your interview. If you're too scared to raise the question, then that suggests to me that you shouldn't actually be at that interview. Oh, I read that HR is having to do a lot of work regarding XYZ allegations on Glassdoor. How is that going? You ask the question. Because, as I said, you're interviewing them just as much as the company's interviewing you. You need to know before you join that company that you're making the right move, even in a difficult or challenging recruitment market. And I know how hard it is for people. It is really hard for some people currently. However, you need to make sure that your mental health, above all, is protected. Your mental health must be protected. It must be your priority above any income that you could derive from a role. So if you're reading on Glassdoor many negative reviews, and you notice that the few positive reviews don't have any likes, but the negative reviews have, multiple thumbs up, you need to raise the question. You must raise the question. It's important. You must raise the question and give the organization a fair opportunity to respond. But we raise the question constructively. Oh, I heard this. I read this. I hope it's not causing HR any grief, but you raise the question. You ask the question, is this a new role? And if they say no, or what happened to my predecessor? You ask the question. And if you're too scared to ask the question, then I would question whether you need to be in that environment, whether you want to really be hired into an environment whereby before you've even joined the organization, you're scared of asking a question constructively. So we look for Glassdoor reviews. And I think I just missed something there, very valid. Glory said, also, Glassdoor gives the salary scale if you are unsure of what the company's benefits are, which is true. So Glassdoor will give a salary scale if you're unsure of what the company offers. So you can go there and look at their benefits. So that when you're asked the question, if they want to hire you, how much would you like? You can say, oh, here's the market average. And by the way, I also read on Glassdoor that this is what you pay. pre-interview research. Make sure that you follow companies on LinkedIn that you would like to work at. If you would like to work at a company, then follow the company on LinkedIn so that you read up on any of their news. You also see any jobs that are on offer within the company. And if they make any posts, you comment on those posts. That is something that we don't do so well, including in the Ladder Back Down WhatsApp group. When someone posts something, we don't frequently go there and comment or like those posts. Whereas in commenting on that company's social media announcement, you become visible to that company. If you've raised a constructive comment. So let's learn to actually comment on companies that we follow, comment on their posts. If the CEO posts, you comment on that post constructively. Don't say, can I have a job? Simply comment on posts. If you don't have anything to say, simply like the post. So have we got any volunteers who would like to share their 30-second elevator pitch? Thank you to volunteer 1. And I need another volunteer to share their 30-second elevator pitch with us. Okay, you can go ahead, thank you, and just share it with us. I've asked you to unmute, and please feel free to say your name if you're happy to share your name. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
My name is Ijoma. My name is Ijoma. 30 seconds.
My name is Ijoma. My name is Ijoma Sekalaye, a project manager with over 10 years of proven record of success, leading all phases of diverse projects. I am proficient in the use of project management methodologies and tools to deliver different types of projects. I am glad to tell you that I worked as a journalist for over 10 years of my life, and I'm an award-winning journalist. At that, I decided to divert into project management after studying and reading much about what project management is all about, and I am glad.
Thank you.
My 30 seconds is over.
Yeah, your 30 seconds is over. And thank you so much, because I put you on the spot there. Yes, so you've told us your background. You've told us what you have done, what you've achieved in project management. So that was really good for, having been put on the spot. As in, you told us your background. You told us that you've worked on diverse projects. You've told us that you switched from journalism and that you're an award-winning journalist. So well done, thank you. Anyone else want to share their 30-second elevator pitch? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've got our second volunteer, so I'll ask you to unmute. Thank you. Thank you, kindly unmute.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening.
Good evening.
So, I'm a business analyst with over 6 years experience. I have experience in the waterfall and agile methodology. Can you hear me all right? Hello?
Yes, we can, thank you. And your 30 seconds is going. Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, can I start over again? I thought you said you couldn't hear me. That's why I stopped.
Yeah. No, we can
I'm a
hear
business.
you. Yep.
Okay. I'm a business analyst with over 6 years experience. I have experience in waterfall and agile methodology. I'm a team player and a people's person. I'm an extemporaneous speaker, so I can learn about something and speak effectively, even when being asked about the same thing. I'm also like a problem solver, as I'm able to look at a problem and define the needs that I need to solve in that problem. I've got excellent stakeholder engagement skills. I think I've got a lot of qualities to
Okay.
bring about
I think you've gone over 30 seconds there.
value to the business.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think you've gone over 30 seconds, but thank you so much for that. And you've talked about your achievements, but I would have liked to have heard a few more achievements. But you did talk about the different methodologies that you have and things like that. I mean, the knowledge of the different methodologies, but I would have liked to have heard, anything that you've actually delivered, what you've achieved, one thing that you'd achieved, like on an award, commendation, or anything like that. But thank you. Would anyone like to give it another go? Anyone else like to give us their 30 seconds elevator pitch? Anyone brave enough? Anyone brave enough? Okay, thank you. I've got 2 more volunteers and then we'll move on. Thank you. I've asked Esther to unmute. And we'll keep it to 30 seconds. Thank you. You can start now.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Esther. I've been a business analyst for a couple of years now. I've got strong understanding of agile and waterfall methodology. I've led a team of 7 BA business analysts to go through change and migration process while I was at Axis Bank. I'm currently working on a project.
Okay, 30 seconds up. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Well done. But you've told us what you've achieved. You've told us how many people you've led and what you're currently working on. Thank you. Okay. And Fola Shade, could you kindly give your elevator pitch?
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Fola Shade Adebamiru. I'm a business analyst with less than a year experience. Prior to now, or till now, as we speak, I'm privileged to be among the team of people who attended to the CBN examiners anytime they come around for our reviews. I've been on that team for 2 years, 2 consecutive times now, and it's always been a success. Currently, I'm supporting a team of business analysts, and the team comprises of 42 different people.
Thank you.
That's all there is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the only thing that I've got to say against, I did not know that's all there is, but you did well there. Thank you so much. Well done. And I'll just, be lenient and take 2 more. So we've got Shaliwa and Kenny who have got their hands up. So I don't want to disappoint anyone. So Shaliwa, could you kindly unmute yourself? Shaliwa and Kenny, kindly unmute yourself and then give us 30 seconds each, and then we move. Okay. Shaliwa, can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to
You're
be
welcome.
interviewed for this
That's part of your 30 seconds.
Yes, I've started. Thank you for
okay.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be interviewed for this position today. My name is Shaliwa Ayokomio. I am an experienced information technology auditor and risk management professional. I have a strong background in providing support to business management on control and risk issues. My expertise lies in ensuring the dissemination of best practices throughout organization in alignment with ISO 27001.
Thank you so much. And your 30 seconds is up, and you have given us a lot there. And I'm hoping to see you in group 2, giving us a lot, sharing a lot of your experience and knowledge with us. from
Okay.
Monday. Yes, but thank you. You really gave that a good go and you gave us a lot of information. Thank you. Thanks. Could we have Kenny? And then because Prince has refused to lower his hand, we're going to have to ask Prince to give us a 30-second, and that is it. Kenny and then Prince, and then we move on. Thank you. Kenny, 30-second elevator pitch, please. Can you unmute yourself? I've asked you to unmute.
Yeah,
and
thank
then,
you. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, my name is Kendi. I'm a certified business analyst professional and an experienced multi-sector business analyst with over 12 years experience in healthcare, telecoms, fintech, and edtech sectors. I'm a change management registered practitioner with the APMG International. I have a BCS Foundation certificate in user experience and I'm QCell certified. I'm very passionate about using technology to drive excellent healthcare delivery systems and have diverse experience in business analysis, business process improvement, systems analysis and design. Thank you.
Thank you. You're not stealing another 30 seconds. So 30 seconds is up. And thank you so much for that. I recognize your voice and I recognize your experience as well. And that is amazing what you just shared with us. But there is one thing that I will say to most of us that have shared here that we shouldn't really be sharing in our elevator pitch or indeed in our CV. We shouldn't be highlighting, but I'll let Prince talk for us and then I will now resume and I'll just share this. Okay, Prince?
Sure. Hello, my name is Prince. I'm an astute cybersecurity professional, specializing in the GRC space. Now, my passion for that space developed as a result of a gap I identified during my days during my days of working as an IT technical support. In terms of communication, it was really difficult for the technical cybersecurity guys to communicate their issues for everyone to understand. Hence, the need for the GRC space. So, as a stance, I'm an ISO 27001 lead implementer and a lead.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think your intro was what got you beyond because you said some really good stuff and I would have expected you to have started with that actually. That I identified a gap with when I was working as an IT technical professional, which made me consider actually I'd need to move into the cybersecurity space. And this is what I'm doing to address the gap. So it was your intro that actually got you beyond the 30 seconds, but thank you so much for that. So
Sure.
And I hope to really, really see a lot more engagement from the people that have introduced themselves today in the ladder back down groups that you belong to, the sub-focus groups, because we seem to have a lot of talent here. But the one thing that I would say about an elevator pitch or indeed about our CVs, that if you have 20 years experience, for example, please don't put that on your CV. Why? Because it gives the recruiting company the opportunity to guess your age. And you really don't want anyone to guess your age unless you're really, really young. There are plenty of other characteristics that you and I may share that may give rise to discrimination. Age, race, disability. And so you don't really want to share your years of experience. If you've got 25 years of experience and you're pointing it out there in your elevator pitch or in your CV, 25 years of experience, then everyone starts calculating your age. Oh, we don't want to hire someone who's got 25 years experience because that possibly makes them, age 47 or age 50 or whatever. So don't give away information that you're not required to give away. So practice your 30-second elevator pitch, practice your question for the interviewers. You need to know your CV inside and out, so that if you're suddenly asked a question during the interview, you're not now fumbling through your CV to try and find out where you'd stated that. Know your CV inside and out, because most of their questions will actually come from your CV. The interviewer won't ask you how you used SQL if it's not in your CV. But if you've written that in your CV, you need to have examples of where you've actually used that. As I said, follow key company influencers on LinkedIn and Twitter and like and comment on their posts. Review all your posts on social media. Make sure that, and this is a case of, sound advice anyway. We shouldn't be posting non-constructive comments on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram. If your accounts, even if your accounts won't be viewed by an employer, we shouldn't be doing that. We should get into the habit of being clean in our communications. If you've had a tiff with someone, even if it's with a company where they haven't delivered something that they were meant to deliver, if you're going to post anything online about the company, make sure it's constructive, because a prospective employer will read that post. Let's be really constructive in all, and if you've written posts over the years, a post that you've written like 10 years ago, non-constructive, remove it, go and delete it. Your posts, go and delete them. As you're walking into the interview venue, make sure you turn off your phone so that your phone doesn't go off during an interview. And then you remove any noisy or dangling jewelry or watches. If it's a remote interview, then test your Wi-Fi. And even if you're attending a remote interview, make sure you're dressed up. Don't sit there in shorts underneath your suit. Say that I've got a jacket and I'm just going to wear shorts because I'm not going to get up. What happens if the doorbell goes and you have to get up to go and actually open the door, and you're there in your jacket with just shorts on underneath? So dress up, even if it's a remote interview. And if you need the restroom, make sure you switch off your webcam. Plan your journey, and we're going into this in depth actually in a moment. Plan your journey and make sure you arrive at the venue 15 minutes before your interview, not half an hour, not 1 hour before your interview, but at the venue. So even if you arrive in a coffee shop an hour before your interview, don't walk in then. Can anyone put in the chat, please, why it's not a good idea to arrive 15 minutes before? Can anyone put in the chat why it's not a good idea to arrive before 15 minutes? Anyone think, anyone wonder? Yes, because the interviews may not be ready. They may have scheduled other interviews. That's right. Someone said, so you don't look desperate. I think it robs you of the time to relax, Esther said. I think you're not necessarily putting them under pressure, but one of the most telling reasons, one of the most important reasons is because you don't want to bump into the candidate that they're interviewing before you as you get there and you're sitting there in reception, and then they're seeing off the candidate that they just interviewed before you. So you give them time to actually escort the previous candidate out, to go back into their interview room, and then you arrive 15 minutes before. We'll now be discussing the question, when does your interview really start? Can we write in the chat window, please? When does your interview start and end? Does your interview start when you're approaching the office, the reception hall, the elevator or lift where you're going to give your elevator pitch, or you should be prepared to give that? Or does it start from the interview room? Okay. So some people are really shrewd. Some people have said it starts from the moment you arrive in the office building. And some have said that it ends when you leave the building. When you're called to the interview room, immediately you arrive on the reception, approaching the office. From the time you walk into the building, someone mentioned the car park. Now, I would say those are all good answers, but I would say your interview could actually start a week before you attend the interview. If you haven't met the interviewer before, how do you know that that person that you gave up your seat for on the train isn't your interviewer? How do you know that the person that you jumped into their front in the queue isn't your interviewer? We don't know. We don't know whether that person that we've been polite to on the train 2 weeks ago is that person that is actually going to interview us tomorrow. So your interview doesn't even start as you're approaching the office. So what does that tell us? Be on your best behavior always. Always. Because you never know. That reminds me of something that happened about 2 years ago. And this wasn't actually an interview, but I saw, and this might be funny, but you know, I just imagined afterwards, what if that were an interview? But I was walking to my GP, to my doctor's surgery one day, and I saw this young lady. And I was looking at her like, this lady, you know, I mean, does she think she's going to get to the door before me, to the GP's door just before me, just because she's much younger than me? Very beautiful lady like this. So I was trying to do my, you know, not so obvious sprint to get to the GP surgery before her, which I did. So I got to the GP surgery before her, held the door open though, but then I made sure that I got to the reception desk before her. And then I looked back, didn't see her, and I thought nothing of it. Waited in reception for about half an hour, thinking, for goodness sake, you know, I'm late. And guess what happened? Can anyone type what happened when I was called into the GP's office? Can anyone type? Yes, she was the doctor. Thanks, Esther. She was the actual doctor. And I had to actually laugh with her and say, I hope you didn't notice me, you know, hot-footing it ahead of you to try and make sure that you didn't get to the get to reception and get seen before me. So, and she took it, she found it funny as well. But that could be your interviewer. I wasn't rude, and thankfully I held the door open for her, but let's just be aware that our interview doesn't start from when we start approaching the office. You could meet someone on a train and be rude to them, and then you end up being interviewed by that person in a fortnight, in a month's time. So just be kind, be decent, always, 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 just be kind. Just be kind. Your interview doesn't start from when you're approaching the office. It can start at any time. And it doesn't end when you leave the building. Because again, you could go out, get on the train, and somebody really upsets you. And you start telling them off. And then they look at you and they recognize you from the office interview that you've just left. And they say, no, we can't hire that person. Just be kind always, not just because you're looking for a job, but just be kind, be respectful always, including online. Including online. It's so important to carry ourselves with respect and to respect everyone else. So we've talked about our 30-second elevator pitch. You've got 30 seconds to sell yourself. Make sure that you keep the time. Make sure you keep your points relevant, succinct, and brief, convincing and confident. Now, whenever I'm asked at an interview, tell me about yourself, I always ask the question, how long have I got? And after 30 seconds, if I haven't asked that question, then I'll say, oh, would you like me to continue? Just to make sure that I'm not rambling. So I ask the question, how long have I got? And I always try and make it about things that I would like to be asked about. My name's Ibukun Emmanuel Adebayo. I'm the founder of the Ladder Back Down. My interests are IT, cybersecurity, data privacy, and governance, risk and compliance. I started the Ladder Back Down in January 2020 so that Black humans can support one another. That's it. And so then they won't ask me any questions about SQL, even though I know SQL. They won't ask me questions about that. And I don't want them to ask me questions about that because that is not one of my strengths. So when you're introducing yourself, try and introduce yourself around areas that you're more confident in, that you'd be able to answer questions on. Because you can rest assured that they will ask you one question. Oh, you said that you founded the Ladder Back Down. Could you tell me more about that? Or you said you're a cybersecurity expert, or you said you're a privacy expert. So only mention things about yourself that you're confident talking about when it comes to questions. Body language at interviews. a cordial handshake. Now, I know that it's often mentioned that you shouldn't give a limp handshake, that you shouldn't just, give a soft handshake, but you make sure that you're not gripping their hands in a vice-like, grip as if you want to break it or something. Just give a cordial handshake. Although till date, I'll still ask people that I meet, oh, would you like me to shake your hand? Or would you like a fist bump instead? Because in some cases with COVID out there, some people don't want to shake anybody's hands. But if you shake an interviewer's hands, make sure that it's actually a cordial, relatively firm, but not vice-like grip of their hand. When you sit down, please, I know that some of us have tried and tried and tried to get a job, which may affect our confidence. But when you actually sit down at an interview, sit upright, because you're not down and you're not out. So forget the saying that one is down and out. You are not down and you're not out. The fact that you're alive means that there is abundant hope for you to come out of this situation if you don't have a job currently. So you sit upright. You sit confidently. Coffee or no coffee. Now, if you know that your hands may tremor, may shake, then please politely decline the coffee. Politely decline the coffee. Eye contact. Now, if you're watching, if you're actually doing your interview over Zoom or over a platform, then please make sure that you maintain contact with your video camera. Eye contact there, because then it appears as if you're talking to the recruiter. So you keep your video camera level with your eyes, and then you just look into that computer, into that video camera. You don't give them the, like stare with no blink. You have to blink, but please make sure that you maintain that eye contact with your video camera. And if it's a face-to-face interview with a panel, then you need to make sure that you're looking from one panel member to the other, so that you're not excluding any member of the panel. You don't exclude any member. You look around the room, you look around the line, along the line. And when you're addressing, or if you're being asked a question of one of the interviewers on the panel, then you face them, you look at them. If you've got shaky or sweaty hands, then please keep a tissue in your hands so that you can clean your hands, so that you're not shaking their hands with sweat. And please don't take a pen with a clicking top into an interview, because I've seen that on many occasions where someone takes a pen in or brings a pen in, and then the pen is just clicking and they're clicking on the top. So if you're nervous, simply take a pen with no clicking top in, and it's okay to say to the interviewer. I've had people say to me before, oh, I'm really nervous. I get nervous at interviews. And then it's my responsibility as the interviewer to try and reassure you that I'm a human being just like you, which is something that you need to remember as a candidate that the person interviewing you is an equal human being that was once in your shoes looking for a job. That's what you need to remember, that they were once in your shoes looking for a job, and their only response will be yes or no to you. So don't allow nerves to get in the way of you showcasing what you can deliver, why you're the best person for the role. You can take a copy of your CV in to glance at occasionally, but not to be reading through your CV and shuffling the pages and thinking when they ask you, oh, when you were at this company, and then you say, okay, hang on a minute, let me just check. No, you can keep your CV to hand, or you can take one page with bullet points from your CV. And you can ask the question, please, may I take notes during this interview? What might you want to note down during an interview? Why might you want to take notes during an interview? Any responses in the chat, please? What might you want to note down, and why might you want to take notes during the interview? Responses, please, in the chat window. Why might you want to take notes, and what might you want to note down? Okay, so you don't forget key points. Yes, so everybody here has given good answers. So you don't forget key points to remember things that may help in the second stage interview, questions you may want to ask at the end as a reminder. Yep, that's right, the question being asked, so I understand better and give the appropriate answer. Yep, and that is, it shows you're a serious person with attention to details. Yep, that's good. So we've got some really good responses there. Yep, so you ask the question, please, would you mind if I take notes? And if they say, no, we wouldn't mind, take notes, then you need to make sure that whilst you're taking the notes, you're still able to maintain that eye contact. That is so important, that you're not suddenly turning into a journalist where you're looking down at your notes whilst they're asking you questions. We can't afford to do that. So we need to be able to take those notes as we're still maintaining that eye contact, which is, an art in itself to do. Yep, Tunde has said if the question is long, you may want to take notes. Yeah, so you take, again, points, bullet points of those notes, rather than trying to write the whole question down. Our tone of voice matters a lot at interview. And I know that I've got this thing where, number one, my voice, I've had surgery on one of my thyroid glands. So half of my thyroid was literally removed. So I've had a surgery on that, and it's made my voice even deeper than it was at birth. But at interview, or even in face-to-face discussions, I'm very able to actually manage that. How do you manage a deep voice face-to-face? Well, one of the first things you do is to learn to smile a bit, not to give a full mouth grin during an interview, but smile, because it softens our tone. In addition to our tone of voice, one of the things that we need to do, which I'm not doing quite well currently, is actually is to keep our hands clasped rather than wave our hands around. I do that a lot. I actually, I use my hands to make these circular moments and I wave my hands around, but we can't do that during an interview. So it's best to just clasp your hands together. Yeah, thank you so much, Iritunde. That word just made me smile in the chat window. But yes, that's exactly what we do a lot. And I don't know whether it's a cultural thing or something which I'm still doing it, even as I'm trying to explain things. So thank goodness the video is off. But we need to keep our hands clasped on our knees so that we're not frightening our interviewers. And we listen, and we keep listening. Listen to the question, listen to things about the company that could help you, as we said earlier, in your questioning of them. It would also help you in your second stage interview, if you're invited to a second stage. So listen. And if you don't understand something, when they ask you to ask questions, if you've got any questions, please never say, I don't have any questions. So you can say, oh, I didn't quite get what you said about this. Could you kindly repeat that? Show an interest in the company, show an interest in what they're saying. Questions that you may want to ask the interviewers. Ask a question based on your pre-interview research about the company. So you would have conducted this pre-interview research. We talked about Glassdoor, we talked about LinkedIn, we talked about Googling the company, we talked about their social media pages, we talked about their financial reports. Ask questions. At least one question about the company based on what you found out about them. Oh, I read on Glassdoor that you've got an amazing culture. And I see myself fitting in here. But what do you think is responsible for your company being listed as one of the top 100 companies to work for? Ask a question based on what you've been told during the interview. You may also want to ask about the competencies that the hiring manager values the most. What do you like to see in members of the team? Do you like them to be proactive? Do you like them to work independently? You ask questions about the team culture. The team culture, that's so important. Oh, how many people have left over the past year? How long has the longest serving member of the team been here? What do you say are the strengths of the team as a whole, as the manager? Whenever I attend an interview, I've always, and this has been for years, I've always been told, you've asked us questions that we've never been asked before. And that's another reason I don't like going on these sites that, or viewing these articles that say 10 questions to ask a cybersecurity leader, or 10 questions to ask this person at your interview. I don't like that, because I want to be me. I want to ask unique questions. Questions that actually make them think. Now, some of you may remember that I talked about the reason I came up with this 5 interviews, 5 offers out of 5 interviews phrase, because I got 5 offers last year, August. But I mentioned earlier that I was able to promptly eliminate one of the offers because I was asked during my first stage interview a question which I didn't know the answer to. So when I was asked to ask them questions, I said, what is the answer to this? And that's another thing that I do. If I don't know the answer, then I'll ask you that question. So I asked what the answer was, and they said, oh no, that we're non-technical, so we'll have to ask, you'll have to ask that question of the person next week. So at the second stage interview. So second stage interview, I was asked the question again, and I then said, oh, I think it's this because this is what I've read. But what do you say is the answer to that? And then this team of 3 interviewers suddenly went on to Google to try and look for the answer. And I was not inclined to join that company because I felt that when you're interviewing me, or when I've interviewed in the past, the intention has never been to trip somebody up. So if I don't know the answer to something, I'm not going to ask you as a candidate to tell me the answer to that. I won't ask you that question. So as soon as they made the offer, I simply said, no, thank you. I found something else, but thank you for your time. Again, politely. And your last question should always be, when might I expect to hear from you? Because I'm really keen to join this interesting team based on what you've told me today. You shared with me that this team, that they work cohesively, they work together, that they're really proactive, and those are the sort of skills that you'll see in me. So when might I expect to hear from you for the next stage? But never say, I don't have any questions. These are sort of questions that you may be asked. And one interesting thing is that last week, Saturday, so I actually delivered this workshop in 2021 as well, but I've added to the content. Now, last week, so someone told me that they had an interview a fortnight ago. And so I did what I normally do, which was to send them the previous recording to this session, sent it to them. Last week, Saturday, they sent me a message saying that, let me actually say what they said, because I don't want to misquote them. I had read it out to someone earlier here, but they sent me a message saying, yep, they said that, thanks for taking the time out, good news, I've been moved to the next stage of the interview process. I am to appear, And also 90% of all what was on the interview video you sent me was asked. So we often get asked these competency questions in addition to the technical questions, and a lot of companies tend to place more emphasis on the competency-based questions. They ask questions such as, tell us a time when you did this, not how do you do this? What do team members say about you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And I have actually answered some of these questions in the Ladder Back Down WhatsApp group, but I'll answer that question again regarding where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? I will often respond, technology has changed so much over the years that if I were to tell you that I want to be an IT director or a CIO, I don't know if those roles will exist as they are today. So I'm flexible in terms of where I want to be in 5 years' time. But one thing you can be assured on is that I will always learn and continue to learn until the day that I drop, that I'll probably end up dropping and dying with a book in my hand, because I'll continue to learn towards any role in the future that piques my interest. So I'm telling you that I'm flexible and that I'm a continuous learner. I wouldn't actually say till the day I die in an interview, but I always say that I'm a continuous learner and I'm flexible enough to recognize and experienced enough to recognize that the jobs that existed 10 years ago, the CISO role, the Chief Information Security Officer role, did not exist 10 years ago. And yet here we are today. So I recognize that I need to be flexible, but whatever role I'm going to occupy in 5 years' time, I'll make sure that I'll be, learning towards it until I get to those, until I'm there in 5 years' time. What's your greatest achievement? For those of us in the Ladder Back Down WhatsApp group, we asked that question this morning. What is your greatest achievement? And before the amazing people that I'm working with in the Ladder Back Down, before the 2,070 something individuals that joined the Ladder Back Down WhatsApp group came along, I'd always said that my greatest achievement was in 2008 when I recruited. I recognized that the economy was going into a recession. So I asked my CEO at the time to give me a budget to recruit 10 apprentices, secondary school leavers in the local community. I recruited those, and then as experienced staff left, experienced members of the IT or the service desk team left, I actually then promoted these people. And then today, I can say that 8 out of those 10 apprentices are now consultants, with some of them possibly earning more than me today. Before the Ladder Back Down, that was my greatest achievement. So my greatest achievement, when you're talking about your greatest achievement, it doesn't have to be about qualifications or certifications. It could be about something that you've done as a volunteer. It could be anything, as long as it's something that you've positively accomplished. My greatest achievement now, although I'm nowhere near finished with what I desire to achieve for everyone in the Ladder Back Down community, but that is my greatest achievement, actually just seeing people helping one another. That is my greatest achievement now. I remember a day in April, I believe it was, April or March or April, where somebody rang and said, somebody posted rather in their group then that they had an interview and that the recruiter was going to call within half an hour and that they were a bit nervous. And then people started posting words of encouragement and have you thought of saying this? Have you thought of answering this? Have you thought of this? And that day I realized, wow, that there are many of us willing to actually send the ladder back down amongst our community. That to me is an achievement of bringing all of you together, if you're in the community, bringing you together to inspire one another. Tell me about a time you missed the target. If you're answering this question, you need to make sure that you tell the interviewer about a time you missed the target, requested an extension, and then you finished before the extension expired. Don't simply tell them about a time you missed the target and the company lost profit as a result of it. Don't stop at the point you missed the target. You need to let them know exactly what you did to bring things back on track. When asked a question about a strength and a weakness, my strengths and my weaknesses, please don't say you have no weaknesses, because I've heard that before. And every single human being, regardless of how brilliant we might be or how accomplished we might seem, we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. As long as you consist of dust and oxygen and blood, then you have your strengths and you also have your weaknesses. So try and turn your weaknesses into a positive. I will always tell the story time and time again of where I've stayed behind to try to resolve a technical issue for 26 hours. Whereas if I'd left after 12 hours or 14 hours and gone home to sleep on things, I may have come up with a solution before Microsoft ended up coming up with a solution for us 26 hours later. So I always say that my weakness is to just try and stay there until I've sorted out the problem. But then I now say that I've come to realize that sometimes all it takes is going home with the recognition that tomorrow is another day. And often when I've done that, I just left the situation and returned to it the next day, I've found that a solution has come in the middle of the night or on my way back to the office. So your weakness must be something that benefits the organization. And I'm not saying that we then go and make up weaknesses that benefit the organization, but make sure that the weakness that you're explaining to them has some benefits to the organization. The fact that I once stayed for 26 hours, although an organization wouldn't encourage that today, but at least it shows that you would be prepared in the event of a crisis to stay, to not leave your team in the trenches. So that is a weakness, but also a strength. Salary expectations. When should you ask what the salary will be? And when should you respond about your salary expectations? If you haven't been asked that in an application form or on a careers board, when should you actually ask? Or what should you say if you're asked what your salary expectations are? Can we put this in the chat window, please? At what point should we say what our salary expectations are? If we can put it in the chat window. Say what is within the job advert in line with what the role is offering. Offer stage after the offer letter. I think it's a bit too late after the offer letter. Yep. Okay, thank you. Only when and if asked, and I'll ask what their offer is when asked during the interview after the second stage. Okay, now let's just go back to that question, salary expectations. First of all, we've all agreed that it might be helpful if we go on to Glassdoor and check what the average salary for the role is, not the average salary for that company. What is the market rate for that? However, I have been engaged in a discussion in the ladder back down community where someone said that they would ask at their first interview, and they said that they did get an offer out of one instance where they did that. But I would suggest that if asked what the salary expectations are, we can either ask, what is the salary on offer? Because in some cases, we don't simply get to see that. We can ask what the salary is on offer, or we can say, if asked that question in the first stage, we can simply say, oh, I'd like to wait until I get further down the interview stage, because you don't want to talk yourself out of the job at that first stage interview just based on your salary expectations. So I would say, would you mind us discussing that once I get further down this interview process? So what do we do towards or after the interview rather? Please remember to shake your interviewer's hand on the way out and to thank them for inviting you to the interview. Then when you get home, if it's an agency, actually, as soon as you leave, if an agency has sent you for the interview, then you ring the agent and say, yes, I'd really love to work in that place, because this is, and then you take your key points and say, yep, that they said this about the team, they said this about the company, they said this, and so it's definitely a place that I'd like to work at. Unless you don't want to work there, in which case you still give feedback to the agency. But if it's because of something that was said during the interview, simply say, no, that you've just decided that it's not the right place for you to work. Don't give negative feedback on your interviewers or on the organization. Don't do that. Simply say that you've decided that it's not quite the right role for you. When you get home, you send an email to say thank you. If it's an agency again, you ask them to forward the email to the hiring manager. And you can, oh, sorry, I forgot to say that during the interview or towards the end of the interview, ask if it's okay for you to connect with them on LinkedIn. But you make sure you send an email through the agency and say, could you kindly forward this to the hiring manager? And you simply say, thanks so much for sparing the time to interview me today. I really enjoyed hearing XYZ about the company, again, taken from your notes. And I would really see myself fitting into the team. And then you say, and then you now say, and I would enjoy, or I look forward to hearing from you regarding further interviews. Or if you decided not to work with the company, you simply say, you know, I no longer think that this is the best role for me, and I wish the company all the best in its future endeavors. And you can also say that you'd like the company to retain your CV on file. If you receive a no letter, simply say, or no emails, we're sorry that you're not, simply send an email back saying, yeah, I'd really appreciate the time again spent to interview me. So reiterate that again, even though you said it in your email after the interview, you simply send another interview saying, yeah, really appreciate the time. And I do look forward to working with the company in future. And I would appreciate if you could keep my file, my CV on file, on your records. And is it okay for me to make contact in 3 months' time? Why 3 months? In case the person that actually got the job offer doesn't work out. So ask if you can contact them. If they send you an email saying, I'm sorry, ask if you can contact them, keep in touch, 3 months' time, and I'm more than happy for you to keep my CV on file. You can request a LinkedIn connection with your potential line manager. And please, please, please don't give up. Because if you give up on your job search, you don't know whether, having applied for 30 roles and received a no, you don't know if your 31st role would have been a yes. And you will never know that if you stop applying. Job hunting is almost a full-time job in itself. So for each company that turns you down, you just need to think, maybe that was not the best place for me to work at. And so I'm going to keep applying until I do find the best place for me. A place where I'll thrive. A place where I'll be happy, where I'll be valued. Where I'll be treated with the same respect that I treat everyone else. People are still getting jobs during this season where some people are trying hard to find jobs. People are still getting jobs. And while the summer holiday period is traditionally a quiet period, it's traditionally a quiet period, I still got 5 offers in August last year. And that shows you that there are jobs out there. So you keep applying, don't give up. Don't give up. Ask for feedback from your interviewers. Ask for feedback. Make sure you ask for feedback so that you can keep improving. Ask for feedback so you keep improving. And don't allow your current situation to stop you from pursuing your goals. Don't settle. Don't say, I've attended 5 interviews, so I'm just going to go back and give up. I'm going to give up on my dreams. Remember that that interviewer was once in your shoes. Anyone you see on LinkedIn with big qualifications, with experience, whatever, they started one day. I started one day. And I've worked in places where people have believed in me extensively. And I've worked in other cultures where I've had to believe in myself and to keep striving, keep trying, keep giving 100%, regardless of whether anyone believes in me in that company or not. But you don't want to go into a company because you're desperate. You don't want to go into a company, despite that desperation, where you will not be valued. That can be soul destroying. So how do you make sure that you don't end up in a company where your soul will essentially be destroyed? That is by doing your research from the beginning. Pre-interview research. Regardless of how tough things might seem, make sure that you're attending an interview at a company whereby if they were to hire you, you would be valued. You would be treated with the same respect that you treat everybody with. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, when I talked about your interviews starting from weeks before you actually attend the office. As soon as you enter the office, the building, who is the first person that starts off your interview? Can someone tell me who the first person is that starts off the interview? In the chat window? Receptionist? Receptionist? Exactly, Ezekiel's right. Security. It's actually security, because security will tell you to go to the receptionist. And if you're not polite to that security guard, then you're literally talking yourself out of that role. Be respectful to the security guard. Be respectful to the receptionist. If you see the cleaner, be respectful to the cleaner. Be respectful to the cleaner, because a cleaner, or the word cleaner, is a title. The word cleaner is a title. The word security guard is a title. And that's another reason I actually started the ladder back down, because I see too many security guards where I get talking to them and they say, I was a bank manager back home. I was a lawyer, but I can't find a job, so I'm doing this security. Talk to people, find out about that security guard, find out about that cleaner. They're not the reason you're on the market. So be kind. Just be a kind person. Wherever you go, be kind. Whatever the circumstance, even if that other person isn't kind to you, just be yourself. Engage with the cleaner. I make it a point of duty to talk to the cleaner, to talk to the security guards, to know all the security guards wherever I work. Even if I'm the sole person saying good morning, as soon as I walk through the doors, even if I'm the sole person, I don't care. Because that person that is occupying the role of security guard, receptionist, whatever, they're dust, blood, and oxygen, just like you are and I am. They're not a lesser person than you and I. If you get on a bus, when you're getting off, say thank you to the bus driver. And I've noticed that thing, that whenever I shout thank you to the bus driver when I'm getting off, then other people on the bus say thank you. Other people getting off say thank you. Say thank you to the person. Just be kind, be decent towards people, be decent towards the hiring manager, not because they're the hiring manager, but because they're human. Don't respect people based on their title. Or don't treat people lesser than another person simply because of their title. Be kind, just be generous in spirit. And that generosity, that kindness will shine through at your interview. Smile. Somebody said that yeah, you can't not be desperate with the current situation in Nigeria. It's hard not to be desperate. The fact is that globally, many people are out of work. Many people are out of work. And some of you may have been, or well, I think the majority of people would have been in the ladder back down group when I shared my story of my career, of something that happened 10 years ago now. I can't believe it's 10 years ago. Something happened and I ended up not being able to work for a pay because nobody would hire me. So I wasn't able to earn money from my skills. I had to do voluntary work. At some point during that season, I went to enroll for training in a company to learn compliance. And I was actually made to clean this person's office. It was actually a black man, and I was actually made to clean his office and clean his loo and wash his walls and things like that. And this was after many years of being a CIO and head of information security. But it didn't take away from my character. The fact that I was cleaning and taking this guy's leaflets to distribute in the market, it didn't take away from my character. It didn't take away from the me. So no one's title is their net worth. You are not your title. If you're unemployed today, that is not your character. I wouldn't judge you or treat you badly as a fellow human being because you're unemployed. No, you be kind to people because they are human beings. Let's respect everyone and be kind because we simply don't know what that other person is going through. And every single person is going through something. It is tough in the UK here as well. To that person that talked about Nigeria, it is very tough in the UK. So we just need to stick together and be kind and remain hopeful, remain confident that you know what, that we will get through this. We will get through this. I'm going to ask us to ask our questions in a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now pause the recording and get us to ask our questions. We can all unmute ourselves now and we can ask questions and leave. So again, thank you to absolutely everyone that has taken the time to join us here today. And I really apologize. I mean, there were 165, 170 people eventually that were able to join. So I sincerely apologize for forgetting to renew our upgraded license on Zoom to allow more than 100 people to join us. And thank you so much for your patience and persistence in actually waiting until you could join us. And so we're going to end this workshop, and I'd like to wish everyone all the best at your next interview. But please, please, please do not give up. If there's anything that you remember about today, do not give up, because your job is out there. I don't know how long it will take, but I know that your job is out there. I had to spend 5 years volunteering, as I just said there, trying to keep my skills up to date, continuing to learn. And yet, here I am today. So please persist. Persist in learning, persist in hope. Persist in learning and persist in hope. Keep believing that your next interview will be a success, that that's your job. So thank you so much for taking time out to attend our workshop today. And we of course wish you great success in all your endeavors. We've got our page on LinkedIn. We've got our page on YouTube as well. So please follow our channel on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And you can also follow me personally on LinkedIn. And then we've got our WhatsApp group. And what I'm going to do after this, after I've stopped the recording, is to try and get the WhatsApp group link into the chat window for anyone that would like to join us there. As I said, there's about 2,073 members, although I'd love to see quite a few people that have spoken today become more active. Become more active within the group, because in sharing your knowledge, including in asking questions, you get to learn more. And it builds your confidence when you end up sharing your knowledge. So please, let's remember to remain active in the group and to not lose hope that if we're not working today, this too shall pass. So thank you, everyone. And I'll now take questions offline